Thanks, everyone. I just wanted to start this off and say, do companies always have to compromise their core values when they have to grow and compete in the market?
Do you want to start first?
Oh, boy.
Sonny?
It seems almost like a trick question because the answer is obviously no. But I think it's harder, easier said than done. If there's anything I've learned about establishing company values, it's to come up with values that are actually really incisive as opposed to bland, generic ones. Because Enron's values were integrity, communication, and I forgot what the other one was. Transparency, I don't know. And
honesty.
We all know how that ended up.
And you, Diane?
Yeah. So a lot of companies, especially I stay, as a startup, because I co-founded Freeware in 2007 and acquired by Comcast in 2014. Many startups need to raise funds from investor. When they face the investor, one thing is, you really want the money investment from them. And then what if this money comes with a condition that you don't like? A lot of times, we joke about, taking investor money is like, basically you're dating, getting married. Sonny would say that's even more serious, right? Because in a bad marriage, you could get a divorce. But with the investor, you cannot. It's very hard, basically once you select the investor, you really going to stay with them forever. So for me, I think it's actually even more important, you select the investor and be very careful who you invest them on board and to go to bed with you. So doing that, you don't compromise your value. Because if you do that, you basically like dating, right? You kind of fake yourself, you change yourself for them, and then it's guaranteed to be a bad marriage at the end, and you don't want that to happen.
A litmus test, if I may interrupt there, a litmus test that we used in terms of selecting investors, because it can be complicated because oftentimes when you get that first term sheet, it's like, oh yeah, let's just take it. Oh my God, we got a term sheet. But I think for great teams in a great market, with a reasonable product idea, you're going to get funded in just about, in most environments, I would say. But I would say that the litmus test that we used was, imagine yourself, when you're thinking, should I have investor A or investor B? Just think, just visualize yourself in a situation where you did something, where you made a mistake, where something went wrong, and especially if it was because of something idiotic that you did, right? Then that never happens, right? Happens all the time, obviously, in a startup environment. I would say, and think, is your first thought, how am I going to spin this to my investor or board member? Or is your first thought to call them and say, oh my gosh, we're in real trouble, I need some help, what do you think I should do? And if it's A, then the first answer, then you probably shouldn't work with them. And if it's B, then definitely. And that was what we had at Misfit with Founders Fund, one of our investors. They were amazing. I could just, when we did something wrong, could call them up and ask for advice on what to do.
And I just wanted to ask you about your company's core values. And since you've joined the company in the beginning to now, how have things changed? What was preserved and what was let go?
So let me take the first. Yeah. So as founding Freeware, one thing we always wanted is we get the best people we can. So when you talk about value, I think it's more, more important comparing to value is the culture you have. It started from the co-founders, right? Basically who you want to be. And then that speaks to a lot, comparing to like company like Enron. You don't put your value on your wall and then come in saying this is what you do. You actually started from the leader, you represent yourself, you behave yourself in that way. Therefore, you attract more people buying into the value. and then join you on that journey. So when we started FreeWheel, we started from my two other co-founders are from DoubleClick. So we know each other from the past. And then we founded FreeWheel to focus on video advertising. At the beginning of days, a lot of folks actually just come because they heard Doug, John, and Diane are starting a company. They want to join us. And then, basically, we quickly expand from the three co-founders and all the way to a lot of folks from previous DoubleClick or the previous customers with DoubleClick. They know us. They know how we worked with them in the past. Therefore, they select to join us on this adventure. So I see that a lot of startups is like that. At the beginning, no marketing or advertising can help you go anywhere. It is really the founder's value they hold in their prior career lives to actually make that happen and attracting people. And then after that, you'll start to build your culture and build your value surrounding that.
And Sonny?
We're talking about values here, but one comment I would make about that is I think culture trumps values. We can sit around and think about, oh, what's our company values? Oh, it's this, and that. That's great, but I think there's like a Harvard Business Review article about how culture in many ways is more powerful than just values, because with values, unless you had values that were really incisive and that actually drove decisions, values that were very specific, that can help you deal, especially with dilemmas. If there are clear-cut decisions, should we be honest or not? Well, of course you're going to be honest. But there are many situations where you're in a dilemma. Neither A nor B is are overwhelmingly positive, and you have to choose between that. So you got to ask yourself: are your values going to help you choose between A or B? And if it doesn't, then it's probably not incisive enough. It's not cutting enough in terms of its force.
And I would also add, at the end of the day, it's very important for company to say yes to something. I think it's even more important for company to say no to things actually you don't believe represent your value. A lot of startups will face that, because the first yes you say to something that you don't believe represent your value, you're actually changing the company. And then you need to be very careful on that, because as you're making change, you still want that company to end up with what you started with. And that's most successful company are. You really need to, for every single decision, every single options you choose, you need to be very conscious on that.
Diane, you just mentioned co-founders of the start of the companies driving these ideals in the organization, and you talk about culture as well. How do you drive these elements throughout an organization? Is it strictly concentrated to the founders? As your company gets bigger and bigger and there's more staff, how do you drive it top down? Do you have any advice?
I would say there's probably two things that you could do around, how do you drive a certain kind of culture in the company? How can you drive valuing the same things, right? Obviously, there's the selection. There's somewhat of a self-selection thing, because the stronger your culture is, the more clear point of view that you have on what you value and what you don't. I think people will come and go as a result of that. But I would just recommend two specific things. So one is stories. Have stories that will help institutionalize the values and the cultural norms that you want to have in your company, whatever those norms and values will be. So, stories that are powerful and are memorable. So, one story, I'll just tell you one story. At Misfit, one of our 4 values were be a misfit. You got to do things differently. Be thoughtful. Think before you talk. Do more with less. And the last one, which was the most controversial one, was be a servant leader. Meaning, the more of a leader you are, the more you're expected to serve, and most importantly, serve the user. And and we had, so the story we had was it became kind of a norm that the more senior leadership, when you're traveling with, there's a senior leader traveling with someone, and they get upgraded to first class, they're expected to give up their seat for the most junior person on the team. And it was just the weirdest thing, but it became so normal that, and when people encountered that, they thought, okay, that they're either repulsed by it or they love it. And the other one, so having stories that will be told again and again in the halls of, by the water coolers and whatnot. But the other one I would say is just rewarding, having reward mechanisms in place that will reward values or cultural norms that you want in your company. And I think unless you have those two things, people either not remember it or not really feel that you're taking it seriously.
Yeah, and at FreeWill, one of our culture, our core value is proudly unique. When we say proudly unique, this actually started from, when we were only like 3-person company, and then to these days. I would say that during the company's, increase when they actually adding more and more employee, when you're very small, you don't really need to talk about culture. People see it in you, so that they agree with you, they respect you, they will join you. And that's what they buy into. That's you are part of the culture, or you are the key element in the culture. But as you grow larger and larger, you really need to start to have a wording saying, what's your culture? Right? Because, for example, recently, after the acquisition of Conf, FreeWill grows significantly from like 300 employees to right now basically double the size in merely like 2 years. So now we're talking about our company culture. One of the value we hold is proudly unique. When we say that, we actually represent from all different angle aspects. It started from the the employee, where we have basically we encourage employee dress up to come to work. They have this Thursday tie day, where all the male employee, all the boys will actually come and wearing a tie. They have all those different themes started really grows up from the employee themselves. And then one of the video got viral, I remember 5 years ago, where our employee actually they're wearing a mask, face mask, and then to one of the days to work. And then basically we're saying, hey, what company would actually allow me to wearing a face mask to work? A lot of new hires joined because of that, because they saw that video, saying, hey, this is a cool company. So these days, we hold our value to be proudly unique, where we have a different position comparing to other companies, where basically everyone is basically taking the position of, hey, at the video stage, where you have to go to our video website to actually view the content and then do the advertisement. But FreeWill do it in the reverse way, where we follow the video content anywhere the consumer wants, and then basically making sure the advertising actually works seamlessly. So that's one of our belief, which is a unique position comparing to our competitor like Google. And then, basically there's not just from the culture and from the individual, also at the same time, it's actually taking a unique point of view and being proud of doing that, even though at certain times it may not be popular, but you just continue to do that. And then, at the end, everything will come together.
And I'm sure there's many people in this space where you kind of see certain core values popularized, and you just get, for example, I hear in an interview a lot of startups talking about how they want to change the world. Is there certain core company values that you see that you're just weary of?
I think just really general values that don't really have much power, I think are easily dismissed. I think holding on to your values is costly, and I think unless it's costly, it probably doesn't have much effect, and you might as well not have it. And also I think values will evolve over time. It's not, it may start with the founders because they're the only people around to talk about values. There's only 3 people in the garage. But over time, as you bring in leadership, your culture is going to evolve with the leaders that you bring on board. And I mean, we found that at Misfit. We brought folks on, and they bring some amazing ideas, and we thought, wow, that's a great idea. We should institutionalize that and make that a part of who we are. Like one of the values we added later on was to do more with less. We were bringing on design talent that was always very about minimalism and doing more with less. And I just thought that was just an awesome concept and something that we could always ask ourselves, are we doing more with less? It's not just spending less money, but our features that we're building in, do they serve multiple purposes? Do we need these adornments and embellishments in our design? No. If the answer is no, take it out. And so, I think it's a learning process as well.
Yeah, and I think to me, one is very important thing, especially in the company culture, is because company culture is more like like a machine. It needs to evolve. It needs to actually move forward. I would be very worried about if a company basically start with a belief where they're always the best, so that they refuse to learn. It's like having founding a company from a startup. It's really like having a kids. What's the great thing about kids? Because I have a 4-year-old Maggie, my daughter. What's the great thing about kids really is they learn so much. They don't have any assumptions that they need to be the right one, right? So because they have a such attitude, they can absorb everything that comes to benefit the company. I would say a company that if you see a sign that they basically always willing to learn and adapt, that's a good sign because over the time you just come up on top. If a company always being basically they're the best, they always their way or highway, that's the problem. That's a worry.
And finally, before we close, can you name any businesses that you've seen who's preserved their DNA so well despite substantial growth? What companies they're just doing it right? They kind of your role models, like, oh, they've done a good job.
That's a trick question.
It's
I'll leave it
tough
out.
We're always, like my co-founder at Misfit was John Sculley, former CEO of Apple.
Oh.
And so we've always been big fans of Apple and their focus on user experience. I love that. Always asking, is this good for the user experience? Whether it's in a product or a process, I think it's totally awesome. And I think all of us can learn a lot from that. And we've tried to adopt that at Misfit and just always trying to think about the user. And it's hard because, like I said, it's one of those things that's very costly because it's not always easy to please a user. It's not. Oftentimes, there's easy shortcuts to take that aren't ideal for the user experience, but it's just easier to do. And having the culture that will say no and stand up for that and stand up for the user, I think is very powerful.
And what about you, Diane?
I was joking that that's a trick question. So prior to FreeWheel, I was at DoubleClick. I spent 10 years at DoubleClick, and so to Google. So I know for tech conference, right? A lot of engineers. I'm an engineer too. I started as an engineer at DoubleClick. I want to say Google, no, but I think that's such a common answer. And then the reason being is that's also one thing that we hold very true at FreeWheel as well. And they care about people. And then they want to hire the best and brightest. And then they provide the room for them to grow and the freedom for them to think differently. So I think at FreeWheel, we try to do the same thing as well. And then, the second core value of FreeWheel is deeply caring. We care about people. And then everything we do has people at the first, top priority. A lot of employees actually join us just because of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sonny from Fossil Group and Diane from FreeWheel Media. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.